Greetings. I am Juan Alvarez. I'm the lab's Chief Operations Officer and Deputy Lab Director for Management and Operations. I really want to thank you for all you do for the Idaho National Lab and really give an opportunity to just have a conversation about how important safety is to our future. We have a very demanding mission at the Idaho National Lab. We do very hazardous work. We work with all kinds of industrial type hazards that really kind of challenge us in our daily lives. But when I look back, and I've been here since the original bid, when we came in as Battelle Energy Alliance and won this contract back in November of 2004, and I look back at the years since the first day of the contract back in February 1st of 2005, there's been a number of seminal events, what I call seminal events, where we've had either people seriously injured or very close to getting very seriously injured that have become significant learning events for all of us. Every one of those resulted in learnings where we improved our work control processes, or we changed our way we approach human performance improvement, or we changed something about training, or we created new tools for people that are doing the work. So this is all about learning. So please enjoy the opportunity to learn, internalize it, and really appreciate that where we are today is as a result of a lot of learning that we did from some of these serious events. And our goal is that we never have to add one more video to this inventory. Let's take a look at each of our seminal safety events. In 2006, a new employee was using a table saw to cut pieces of foam. The saw blade guard had been removed before the employee began work. While the employee was cutting, the material kicked back, causing the worker's hand to be drawn into the rotating blade. The blade cut across the person's right palm and almost took their finger off. This is a good example of how important it is to ensure employees are trained on the proper use of tools and equipment. Safety features are in there for a reason. If you have to alter any of the equipment, that's an indication that you may be using the wrong tool. Again, if we had not removed the guard, the injury would have been prevented. 5 years later, we had another safety incident, this time at the Materials and Fuels Complex. Employees were working in a fume hood repackaging legacy plutonium fuel plates when they discovered a plate that was wrapped in plastic. They removed the plastic wrapping, which resulted in a release of airborne plutonium contamination. 13 employees were in the workroom and 3 others were in the control room at the time. 7 of those individuals experienced some level of skin contamination, and nasal smears showed that SIT had internal uptick of plutonium contamination. Later analysis found that work planning hadn't anticipated a breached fuel plate. Additionally, the fuel hood these employees were using wasn't providing sufficient ventilation. Today, we train our employees to not open radiological packaging with markings that indicate a material failure or breach containment. Our employees who work in this area are also trained to stop work when they encounter similar conditions. We also train leaders to take employee safety concerns seriously and investigate issues when employees speak up. In 2013, a research team was testing the performance of a new experimental equipment. An unexpected increase in steam pressure resulted in the release of steam and molten salt through the top of the experiment vessel. Unfortunately, one of the researchers suffered burns to their arm, shoulder, chest, and face. We later learned that the researchers were using equipment brought from home and not purchased through INL's procurement system. They were also working outside their defined work controls. This experiment was designed to be closed. The experiment vessel that we're using was designed to be closed during operations, but researchers wanted to observe the experiment performance by opening the vessel without adding extra defenses or controls or barriers. At INL, we rely heavily on managers and employees to share and enforce performance excellence standards. This did not happen, and a researcher was seriously injured. Another accident happened at the Central Facilities area in 2015. This time, an INL lineman was performing preventive maintenance work on a circuit breaker. During the work, a grounding wire touched an energized overhead cable. This caused an arc flash, an incident with high voltage and temperatures that create the potential for severe damage, fire, and injuries. We learned that these employees hesitated to take the electrical system out of service, which led them to working with the system partially live. These employees knew that similar maintenance work had been successfully performed in the same manner for decades and heavily relied on past experience. If the adjacent circuit breaker system had been turned off, the incident likely would have been prevented. This event taught us that we must question the status quo and not rely on the past successes to avoid finding safer ways, and rely on past successes to find safer ways to perform the work. Self-imposed goals, in this case not affecting power, can lead to risk acceptance in the field. In 2016, an INL ambulance rear-ended an INL fire engine on the desert side. The fire engine driver noticed wildlife approaching the roadway and removed their foot from the vehicle's accelerator. This engaged the engine brake, and the vehicle slowed down, but the brake lights did not turn on. Because of this, the ambulance driver behind the fire engine wasn't aware that they needed to slow down. The ambulance driver was also distracted by the wildlife. Within seconds, the fire engine slowed to approximately 25 miles per hour, but the ambulance driver maintained their speed of 60 miles per hour. When they became aware of the situation, the ambulance driver tried to brake and swerve out of the lane, but they collided with the back of the fire engine. In our investigation, after the event, we learned that engine brakes on older vehicles do not always engage the brake lights. This incident also reminded us of the need to practice safe following distances and to avoid distracted driving. A year later, a delivery driver was severely injured after their leg was struck by a vehicle barrier at the ATR vehicle monitoring facility. An INL security officer completed inspection of the semi-truck and authorized the driver to enter the facility. However, the security officer did not notice that the driver was closing the engine cover before entering their vehicle. The officer lowered the security barrier without first checking to ensure that the driver was out of the way. Due to the design of the barrier's controls, the security officer had to take their eyes off the semi-truck. The driver and the barrier to close the barrier, There were no engineer controls to stop the barrier if an obstacle was in its path. This incident led us to reevaluate our engineer safety mechanisms and the training protocols for security officers and delivery drivers entering our facilities. We also replaced these barriers with less dangerous options where possible. In 2019, we experienced a near miss that could have led to serious injury if an employee had not reacted quickly. Employees needed to move a 6,000-pound milling machine out of a nuclear facility. The unique nature of the facility and limited tools available led employees to use Hillman rollers to transfer the equipment. The employees made a judgment call that didn't align with the manufacturer's recommendation for transporting the equipment. As a result, the massive milling machine tipped over, nearly falling on 2 workers. When we reviewed this event, we found weaknesses that contributed to how this work was planned and performed, coupled with little management oversight at the time of the event. The equipment operators felt that they were left on their own to decide the best way to move the milling machine with the equipment they had on hand. After the event, we discovered that we have better equipment available both on-site and our other DOE labs to perform this work. We have since created mechanical material handling standards and a catalog of equipment we can borrow from and share with other DOE labs. Though no one was injured, this situation provided a good reminder of how we must remain alert and not assume situations are safe just because there's an experienced employee at the helm. The latest event happened at one of our REC facilities in 2021. Doing startup testing and pressurization of the thermal energy distribution system at the Energy Systems Laboratory, a researcher opened the expansion tank valve to remove water from the system. The valve was designed to stay closed during operation, and it was open without employing additional barriers, defenses, or controls. Heat transfer fluid is sprayed from the open valve, causing the fluid to fall onto hot equipment. This resulted in vapor mist and smoke filling the room, creating the potential for employees to inhale fumes and smoke. One person reported having oil drip onto their head, but thankfully no injuries or permanent damage were reported. This event taught us a lot about the changing hazards when research moves from a small to a large scale, also known as moving from benchtop research to an industrial scale. It also reinforced the need to ensure that employees stop work when they have safety concerns, or when unexpected conditions arise. When hazards are identified, employees and managers need to seriously analyze and mitigate this potential risk. So let me kind of summarize a little bit some of my key takeaways that I want to share with you. One, it could happen to any one of us. You would notice that there were some people that were very experienced that were involved in those incidents where a mistake was made or some human judgment was made that resulted in an incident. Or it could have been, in some cases, there were individuals that were new to the lab, maybe less experienced. So it could happen to any of us. The other part is how important it is that we own our own safety. Because at the end of the day, we could put programs in place, and we do. We ask our managers to supervise, and we do. We have our peer reviews that we do. So we have a lot of things that we put in place surrounding all of us to be safe. But nothing is more important than us owning our own safety. If it doesn't look right to you, if you're about to make a misstep, you're about to take a critical step and you're not sure if you have all the right, I would call it resilient steps there, the right level of protection, you need to stop, right? You need to bring it back to your supervisor, you need to bring it back to the planners and regroup about how you're approaching that work. The final decision is going to get made by any one of us. When you take that step to put your hands on the path of a hazard or walk yourself into something that you may not be able to recover. So think about all the things that we teach, HPI, human performance improvement, but we talk about being safety resilient. These are all designed to really teach us as individuals how important it is for us to own our own safety. So thank you again for your attention. Thank you again for all you do for the lab. Let's continue to do it, but let's do it safely.